There was no 911 call, no screaming neighbor, no hotel staff rushing to help. Just a bellboy at the St. Regis Resort in Bali, struggling to move a suitcase until he smelled something. He opened it. Inside was a woman's body, stuffed, folded, crammed into the blood-soaked lining of her own luggage. Her name? Sheila von Wiese-Mack, a wealthy American socialite and mother. She had come to paradise with her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend, and she would never leave alive. Heather Mack was only 18 years old, a privileged teen from Chicago. But this wasn't a typical family getaway. She had always had a volatile relationship with her mother, fights, screaming matches, restraining orders, even police reports filed back in the US for violent outbursts. Sheila thought Bali might help them reconnect, a break from chaos, a chance to heal. But Heather didn't want peace. She wanted freedom, and she had a plan. His name was Tommy Schaefer, Heather's 21-year-old boyfriend. Her mother didn't approve of him, said he was a bad influence, said he was after her money. So when Heather invited him to join them in Bali without her mother's knowledge, Sheila was furious. There was a fight, loud enough that hotel guests later reported hearing screaming through the walls. But behind closed doors, the couple's rage was simmering. And by the next morning, they had made their decision: kill her. On the night of August 11, 2014, inside room 317 at the St. Regis Resort, Tommy waited. He hid behind the curtain with a metal fruit bowl in his hands. When Sheila walked in, he struck her in the face. Then again and again. Heather, 5 weeks pregnant at the time, allegedly watched it all. According to prosecutors, she helped clean up the blood. She wrapped her mother's head in a hotel towel. Then they stuffed her body into a suitcase. Their plan? To leave the luggage in a taxi and vanish. They dragged the suitcase downstairs. Heather was calm. Tommy was sweating. They placed it in the trunk of a taxi and told the driver they'd be back. But they never returned. After hours of waiting, the confused driver opened the trunk, and what he saw would haunt him forever. Inside that black suitcase was the brutally beaten body of a woman. Her limbs were bent unnaturally, her neck bruised, her face swollen beyond recognition. It didn't take long for police to trace it back to the American teenagers, and within hours, Heather Mack and Tommy Schaefer were arrested. The Balinese police didn't waste time. Heather and Tommy were pulled into separate rooms. They tried to lie, tried to say they didn't know what happened, that Sheila had stormed off after a fight and never returned. But their stories didn't match. Security cameras showed Tommy arriving with no luggage, but when he left, he had one. One large, heavy suitcase. And inside that case, Sheila's broken body. It didn't take long before the truth began to unravel. When authorities searched their phones, what they found chilled them to the bone. Hundreds of text messages between Heather and Tommy, planning step by step how to kill her mother. They debated weapons, argued about timing, even joked about getting away with it. Tommy wrote, "If we get caught, we're screwed, but we won't." Heather replied with a heart emoji. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment killing. It was premeditated, calculated, and it was all in writing. Sheila wasn't just any woman. She was a philanthropist, a widow, and the heir to millions after her husband, famed musician James Mack, passed away. Heather had grown up with luxury, mansions, private schools, privilege, but she wanted more. She wanted freedom. She wanted control. Investigators believe Heather murdered her mother for the inheritance. At the time, Sheila had written Heather out of the will, and she knew it. Sheila had already been speaking to lawyers, but she never got the chance to finish the paperwork. The courtroom in Bali was packed. Heather sat silent. Tommy wore a blank expression. They were facing charges in a foreign country, and in Indonesia, murder could mean the death penalty. Prosecutors painted them as heartless monsters, children of privilege who killed to escape their golden cages. The defense tried to argue it was an accident, that Tommy had acted alone in a moment of rage, that Heather was innocent, just a scared pregnant teen. But the text messages told a different story. While on trial for murder, Heather gave birth to a baby girl. She named her Stella. The prison staff built a nursery inside the jail, and for the first 2 years of Stella's life, she lived behind bars with her mother. Photos emerged of Heather, smiling, rocking her daughter to sleep, as if she wasn't facing 25 years to life for killing her own mother. Critics called it a disgrace, but for Heather, it was a twisted version of motherhood, far removed from the one she destroyed. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the decision. Guilty of assisting in the premeditated murder of her mother. Sentence: 10 years in an Indonesian prison, reduced due to her age and pregnancy. Guilty of murder. Sentence: 18 years. No gasps, no screams, just a cold, heavy silence. Heather didn't cry. She smiled. Later, she would say the sentence was fair. She felt relieved. She could now move on with her life. But America wasn't done with her. Heather was sent to Karobokan prison, one of the toughest jails in Bali. But her experience was different. She decorated her cell, she gave interviews, she was often photographed smiling, playing with her daughter, and drinking bottled tea behind bars. Indonesian prison authorities were criticized for the apparent luxuries she was afforded. To many, it seemed she was living more comfortably than she deserved. A woman who had folded her mother's body into a suitcase, now painting her nails behind steel bars. In 2021, after serving 7 years in Bali and being released early for good behavior, Heather Mack returned to the U.S. But she didn't walk free. The FBI was waiting. She was arrested at Chicago O'Hare International Airport in front of her 6-year-old daughter. America charged her with conspiracy to kill a U.S. national abroad, obstruction of justice. Because the victim, Sheila von Wiese-Mack, was a U.S. citizen, and because Heather had plotted her murder before ever boarding that flight to Bali, she could now face life in prison. In a string of media appearances before her 2021 arrest, Heather spoke to the press. And what she said shocked everyone. She claimed, "I never wanted my mom dead." But she also admitted, "I knew Tommy was going to kill her, and I let it happen." She talked about the abuse she allegedly suffered, about years of manipulation, pain, and rage building up inside her. Was she trying to reclaim her image, or just preparing her defense? Because in the end, no confession could clean the blood from her hands. Today, Heather Mack awaits trial in the United States. Her daughter, Stella, has been placed in the care of family. She's only 8 years old. And someday, she'll learn the truth, that her mother killed her grandmother, that her father beat her to death with a fruit bowl, and that she was born in a prison cell, surrounded by lies. No matter what happens in court now, the damage is done. A family destroyed, a mother silenced, and a daughter forever caught in the shadow of a suitcase murder. Beaten to death, her body stuffed into a suitcase, and her own daughter behind the plot. This wasn't just a murder. It was a betrayal that echoed across the world. And as Heather Mack sits behind bars once again, the question remains, was she a victim of control or the architect of cold-blooded murder? What do you believe? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if this case haunted you like it did us, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the darkest sides of human nature, because sometimes the scariest monsters live right inside the suitcase.